Today we are going to learn about UDP based socket programming. We've studied socket programming previously in the classroom, and in the previous labs we have also seen how TCP is used in socket programming. Today we are going to look at how UDP can be applied for socket programs. As we know, the difference between TCP and UDP comes in majorly in terms of reliability. So in TCP there is what is called a three-way handshake, which is not there in UDP. Because of that, there are some structural changes to the server and client programs. The overall concept itself remains the same, but the sequence of the function calls changes. Now, so that is what we will be looking at today. Now for this example, for our UDP sockets example, I have considered an echo server. An echo server basically receives some message from the client and transmits the same message back to the client. So for this functionality, let's just see what the program will look like. As usual, header files are included. In this case, we have hash defined the port number as 8888. So this is the port number on which the UDP server is going to listen for incoming data. Now this is a function to just display errors. So to start off with, it starts with pretty much the same structure. So there is two structures that are going to be used here to store client address and server address respectively. Apart from that, some ints and some buffers just to store the data. Once we've done that, we are going to create the UDP socket. Note that this argument here, sock_dgram, refers to a UDP socket. It was sock_stream in the case of a TCP socket. So once we have created the socket, we'll populate the server address structure with using the port number which we have hash defined. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and bind the socket that we have created to the server address structure, which basically involves the port number. Once the bind is done, we are just listening for incoming data. This is where the three-way handshake of TCP is absent. There is no listen, connect, accept. So here we are just waiting for any data to come in which we are going to receive from. Okay, the signature is different. Receive from means you receive the data as well as you receive the IP address and port number from where the data is coming, which is why we have this structure here. This is important in UDP because we don't know where the incoming connection is coming from because we don't have a connect. So because we have to reply back to the same machine as in the same address, IP address and port number, we need to store the IP address and port number when it comes to us in the form of some data. So we receive data from any incoming connection. Once we have done that, we are just printing out the data that we have got, and then we are transmitting the same data back to the client. Note here we are using send to for the transmission. Send to is send the data back to the IP address and port number from which it came, which is in this structure. So this is the server side program. On the client side, what we are going to do is, as usual, include some header files. We have hash defined the port number as 8888. Like TCP sockets, this number has to be same on both the server and the client side. We have also hard coded the 127.0.0.1 in this case. So what we are doing here is, on the client side, we are just creating a socket as usual, and then quite blindly we are just asking the user for a message. Once we are asking the user for a message, instead of making any attempt to connect to the server like we did in TCP, we are just sending out that message directly over the socket that we have created. So send to socket message. Now where are we sending it to? We are sending it to the server. We are sending it to the server. So this part of the code is populating the server's IP address. Okay, both of which are basically hard coded here. So that is populated into the server address structure, and once that is done, we are transmitting that message directly out to the server. Now because it's an echo server, that server is going to reply back with the same message. We are just going to receive that message and we are going to print it. So this is the basic functionality of the program. Let's see how it executes. We have to open one terminal for the server and one for the client. So on the server terminal, I'm going to compile the UDP server. I'm going to call it userve. You can ignore some warnings. So once we are done with that, we can compile, we can run the compiled code userve. So it is waiting for data. On the client side, we are going to compile the client program. I'm going to call it uClient. We can ignore some of the warnings that come through. So we compile the client, it's called uCLI. So because it's an echo server, it's asking me for a message. If I type hello, that message is transmitted from here to the server, and the server will reply back with the same message to the client. Okay, because we have this in an infinite while loop, we can continue to type messages, and then we'll keep seeing that the server is replying back with the same message. So this is how we create socket connections using UDP, and the major differences between TCP sockets and UDP sockets have also been discussed here. Thank you.